Hey folks, we have a little bit of change for the course, at least for this class. I was putting together this lesson, and I teach this class in person, and in person it's a lot easier to read the students. I can pick up if you all are getting it, or if you all are struggling, if you have questions, if you have concerns, or if this is a piece of cake for you. And obviously it's not as easy picking up on that teaching it online. So I thought we'd pump the brakes for this lesson anyway and do a sort of a midpoint review for Excel. We have a couple more lessons in Excel where we'll start with pivot tables, but I think this is a good place where we can kind of catch our breath, take a little bit to review the formulas that we learned, and also go over a practice exercise where we can take a small data set, run a bunch of functions, and put it into words into what could turn out to be a story. How does that sound? Again, if you have questions, concerns, if you think we're going too fast or too slow in this class, keep me posted. But let's get started. So one of the first things that we learned in Excel were importing files. We learned how to grab them from the web, we learned how to copy and paste them, but for the most part you import text files. And text files, as you remember, they can be delimited with a comma or a tab or a colon between each column, or fixed width. And fixed width are the text files where you'll need a record layout to show you where exactly the columns lined up. We also learned that column formats are important. You can't add a column that is based on text or based on a date. You have to change it to numbers or to currency. Of course, we've been sorting and filtering ever since day one with Excel, and learned that little magic box on the right hand side where you can copy it down if it doesn't copy down automatically, or copy across for that matter. Freeze panes to keep a specific row or column frozen as you work with the data, and also text to columns, that nifty little tool that'll help break up one column into multiple columns, and it lets you choose if it's delimited or fixed width, just like when you did importing the data. Some of the early formulas we learned: the upper, lower, and proper. These help with the capitalizing or lowercasing cells, and they start with equal, upper, then the cell number. And of course that's the same thing for lower and proper as well. We looked at cleaning data with the left, right, and mid functions. These grab certain characters in a column and place them in a new column. For instance, the left function, equal left, open parentheses, the cell, then the number of characters, would start on the cell, start on the left side of the cell, and then count over however many characters you specify and grab those characters and put that information into the new column. Same thing with right and mid. These are really helpful for dates, obviously, but they can be helpful for any types of text columns. You can grab the first name of a pet, or you can grab a county name and move it over to a new column. We also learned day, month, and year. Now these are helpful in breaking up dates. A lot of times I'll do analysis based on years to see how things have trended over time, and these formulas are equal day, then the cell, or equal month, then the cell, and that'll grab the specific year for you, day for you, or month for you. And these are based on column formats where the format is date. And of course we have our friend concatenate. These smash all columns together, as many as you want, with an ampersand and quotes in between each cell. And of course if you're working with smashing dates back together, we learned that instead of a space between the quotes, you just put a backslash or a period. But that's the concatenate formula. We also learned a little bit of math. We learned how to sum. That's equal sum, and then open parentheses, the starting cell, colon, down to the ending cell. And this is if you're doing it in a line or in a row. If you just wanted to select certain cells that you wanted to add, then it would be cell 1, comma, cell 4, comma, cell 14, comma, etc. Same thing with average. Equal average, the starting cell, colon, the ending cell. And of course you can select just the individual cells as well with commas instead. Percent change. Remember the no. New value minus old value divided by old value. Percent change is really helpful. I was just working on a story today about new census information that I used a percent change. So to see how different values have changed over time. And you also have percent, the small value over the large value. Real simple. And of course the dollar sign between, the dollar sign before the letter and before the number of a cell will lock it. So you can copy a formula down and it will always revert back to that one cell that you have locked. We also learned the trim function. This is helpful for cleaning up blank spaces in Excel. It's used to prepare your data for functions and for analysis, and that's equal trim and then the cell that you want. We also talked about the date diff. So this calculates the number of days or the number of months or the number of years between two dates in Excel. And that's equal date diff, your starting date, comma, your ending date, then quote unquote a D, an M, or a Y, depending if you want to measure days, months, or years. We learned about an if statement, and this populates a column with the text that you want if the old text in the other column is true or false, essentially. So you have equal if, whatever criteria you want, then is it true, comma, if not, then write not true. That's the if statement. And finally we have the count if. And this counts the number of records that meet your criteria. So we have equal count if, the starting cell, colon, the ending cell, equals whatever text or whatever information you want. And that'll return just a pure number. So that's a really quick 8-minute review of the Excel formulas that we learned. What I have intended now is for you to grab a Excel file called food stamps that I put online. Grab it, download it, copy it, save it as an original, and open up the former copy. And you can do one of two things. One, you can follow along with us, which obviously I recommend. But if you want to do something before following along, why don't you put your own reporter cap on? Right? Pretend that this food stamp data you just downloaded and you work for a newspaper, or maybe you're working as a PR for a certain county. And take a half hour and write as many functions as you can on this data to see what kind of information you can extract from it and put it into sentences. That's what we'll be doing. So if you want to follow along, that's great. Or if you want to sort of test yourself out and see how well you're picking up this information, feel free to jump ahead and then check yourself with some of the information that I'll go over. Heck, you might even have written formulas that I didn't even think of. So again, that's the food stamp Excel file. I just opened up the food stamps Excel document that I posted online, and let's go over the data first before we actually do any work to it. Okay, you can see the columns. It starts with a location field, and it looks like it's Alamance County, so it's a county information along with the state. Then I also have a state field as well. just NC for North Carolina. I have a date that the data was recorded. In this case, it's early 2017. I have the number of households by county. I have the number of households on food stamp for each county, the number of households below poverty, and average household income as well. So if the data all loaded properly, I should have 101 rows. Yes, I do, because there are 100 counties in North Carolina, and of course the first county is the headers. So if you haven't already opened this up and run some of your own functions to sort of ask the data questions, feel free to follow along. But when I get data like this, as a reporter at the Observer, which I work with census data quite a bit, I start by sort of cleaning up the data before any of my analysis. So let's do that, okay? How would you guys clean up the data? What would be one of the first things that you like to do? One thing I would do, and it's just for visual sake, is turn the household income in column G into a currency. Because I may be posting the data, and if I do, I'll have to turn it into a currency anyway. So you highlight the field, you label the format currency, and then I get rid of the zeros as well. So now we have the dollar signs in front. And also, in case I add any data to this, which often I do, I want to make sure that I know that this is 2017 data. And I can tell it's 2017 by looking at the date. But I'm going to create a new field and just label it year recorded and run a function that grabs just the year. Okay, so let's do that. Create a new column right next to date recorded, and I'm going to call it year recorded. And can you guys run the formula on your own, how to grab just the 2017 and put it in this field? I'll do it right here. You can see I'm using the right formula, and I'm starting at C2, and I'm starting on the right, and I'm grabbing 4 characters over, and there you go. I have 2017, and I'm going to copy it down. So now in case I add any data to it, I'll know that the first part of my information, at least, is from 2017. What else might you do to clean it up? Well, let's practice taking column A and breaking apart the county name and the state name. You don't necessarily have to do this, or there's actually a shorter way, which I'll tell you about when we're done. But let's break it apart and then concatenate the county back to column B, so it's NC. So you'll have Alamance County, comma, NC, as opposed to Alamance County, comma, North Carolina. So first task is to break column A apart. We do that by using the text to columns. So I'll go up to data because that has my text to columns, but first I'm going to copy column A because I don't want to screw with my original copy. I'm going to paste it into column I. There we go. I got a copy of the record right there. And if you guys remember how to do text to columns, feel free to go ahead. And I'm going to do that myself as well. I can see it's delimited by the comma, so that's fine. It's not tab delimited, so I'm going to correct Excel and write comma. And you can see it automatically breaks the two apart right there. Next. Finish. Okay. That was easy. I'm just going to scroll down to double check it. Looks good. Okay. And because it's broken apart, I'm going to label column I county. And I'm going to label column J, in case I ever use it, state full, because it's written out. And now that I'm looking at column J, it looks like there's a blank space before the word north. So I'm going to practice using the trim formula, and you guys do too. Trim column J, put it into column K without that blank space between or before the N. I'll do it here, and I'm going to label column K stateful underscore trim. Again, this is all good practice. There we go. And you can see right away that the blank space to start the field is gone. And I scrolled down just to check out the data, and everything looks pretty good. Now I'm going to do step 2 of what we intended, is I'm going to concatenate our new county field in I and our state field in B. So concatenate those two, and we'll see if we get the same answer. Do that into column L, and I'm going to call it county underscore state. And before I hit enter, you can see that I'm adding a comma between the quotes. So it's going to be county, comma, state. And then I'm going to hit enter and copy it down. Looks like it worked. Okay. So that was a little bit of data cleaning before I ever ran any analysis, and the reason I would do this is, one, it looks better, and two, if I ever had to post the data online, it takes up less room than Avery County, North Carolina, as opposed to Avery County, NC. But a lot of times when I post data online, I like to capitalize the most important field, and in this case it might be the county and state. So in column M, label the header county state upper and write a formula that makes uppercase everything in column L. Does that make sense? There's my header. And write a formula that capitalizes column L. My formula is equal upper L2. Hopefully you all did the same thing. Let's click enter. Looks good. And copy it down. Okay. How you guys keeping up so far? Pretty easy, you think? Now let's just get a little bit of better sense of our data by doing a quick sort. And since this data is based on food stamp recipients, let's see if we can sort the column households on food stamps, so column F, and 9 times out of 10 reporters are interested in sort of the highest to lowest, so sort it to largest to smallest. There you go. Mecklenburg County should have popped up as the most households on food stamps. And even though we didn't write any functions right yet, I would still write a sentence right now, especially because I'm a reporter in Mecklenburg County. So as I said before, a lot of times as I query or as I write functions, I also have a Word document or a Google Doc off to the side where I put my data into words. And that way I can always refer back to the information, and also if editors come by and want to know what I've been doing, I can sort of recite what I found up to the minute. So I would put that quick sort into words, and it might say something like this. About 42,500 households in Mecklenburg County receive food stamps, according to 2017 data from the U.S. Census Bureau. Something simple like that. Now what we would do, what about, let's create a new column, and let's find the number of households or the percent of households on food stamps for each county. So create a new column and find the percent of households on for each county that are on food stamps. And I'm going to put that column right where I is now. So at the end of my original data numbers. And I'm going to call it percent on food stamps. Percent on food stamps. And remember, I put underscores in between all the words because once we get into SQL, underscores will be helpful. So write a formula if you can that shows what percent of each county's households are on food stamps. And I'll do the same, and we'll see if we get the same answer. So I have ready to run equal F2 divided by E2. So households on food stamps divided by households. Your small part divided by your large part. Gotta run that. And you can see it pops up as a $sign because I put it in place of column H where the $sign was. So I'm going to change that from currency to number. 11. And actually I'm going to change it again. I'm going to change it from number to percent. Now watch. There we go. We didn't use percent yet, but there you go. Another simple question. So you could amend your first sentence that you wrote, and you could say something like this. About 42,500 households in Mecklenburg County, or about 11% of the county's homes, received food stamps in 2017. According to U.S. Census Bureau data. So I added that 11% in the middle of the sentence. Let's save the data because we worked on it a little bit. And let's move on to another function that we could write. Actually, before we write a function, let's sort the data on our new column I, percent of homes on food stamps, to see if anything interesting or wacky pops up. So select all, like always, before sorting. Sort, custom sort, and we're getting away from households on food stamps to percent on food stamps, and again I'm going to keep it as largest to smallest. There we go. And actually that could be really interesting. I mean, look how many households are on food stamps in some of these counties. Robeson, almost 30%, 29% in Halifax. So you could actually write another sentence or so right from here, and it could say something like this. In a dozen North Carolina counties, at least 25% of households are on food stamps, data show. Robeson County leads the list with 30% of homes receiving the subsidy. See, that's pretty impressive, and I doubt a lot of your readers or people in general would know that. 25%, so 1 in every 4 homes in these counties are on food stamps. And in this case, in Robeson's case, it's 1 in every 3. Almost 1 in every 3, I should say. Now let's write a query. And we see how these are on food stamps by county. What about for all North Carolina? So scroll down to the bottom. And remember, when you do some sort of calculations, especially totals. I like to keep my total one cell away from the last field of my data. That way when I sort it, I'm not going to sort my total as well. So I'm going to call this total and write a quick formula that totals the number of households in North Carolina and the number of households on food stamps and the number of households below poverty. So total those three up individually for each county, that is. There's my formula for totaling the number of households. Equals sum E2 colon to E101. Did you guys get that? Hit enter and see what you got. And then copy it over to column G. So we have number of households total, households on food stamps, and households below poverty. And I'm going to make this a little easier to read. I'm going to highlight columns E, F, and G, and I'm going to put a comma between them and get rid of the zeros. So there we have it. Since we have North Carolina's total, now we can write a function that says what percent of all North Carolina's homes are on food stamps. So under total, in A104, type in the header percent on food stamp. Now I'm going to add NC because it's a North Carolina total. And do y'all know what the query would be for that? Essentially, you're going to divide the number of houses on food stamps by the total number of houses. So it would be equal. There we go. And I'm going to change that to a percent just for the heck of it. Just like that. So you could have another sentence from your the two different formulas that you just wrote. You could have a sentence that says overall more than 530 homes, or about 14% of all homes in North Carolina, are on food stamps, the Charlotte Observer found. Another nice little nugget of information that we may end up using in the story. Now, what if I wanted to know what part of all these homes, right here, all those homes on food stamps, how many of them are in Mecklenburg, or what percent of them come from homes in Mecklenburg? In fact, I want to find out what percent of them comes from homes in each county. How would you do that? Well, you'd write a percent formula, but you'd have to use the locking technique that we learned. So let's add that column and put it in where column J is. So insert a column on column J, insert, and I'm going to call it percent on food stamps of total. So this is going to tell me what percent of each county's has people on food stamps compared to the total. So how would you do that? What about this if you want to follow along? See my formula up top, equal F2 divided by F103, but I locked F103, so I have the $ before F and the $ before 103. Let's hit enter. Let's see what that gives me. 2.56%. Let's copy it down and then let's fact check ourselves, okay? And the way we fact check ourselves to make sure that that second field stayed locked, so I'm going to scroll all the way down anywhere in my data and I'm going to double click on it, and you can see I still refer to F103. F103. Okay. So let's sort that and see what county has the largest percent of homes on food stamps compared to the state's average. Okay, one county has 8% of homes, of the state's homes on food stamps, and that's Mecklenburg, right up here. So another sentence that we could write would go something like, homes receiving food stamps in Mecklenburg County make up 8% of the state's food stamps recipients. Something simple. Okay, before class began, I went on the census and I found out that in 2010 there were in North Carolina 372,066 homes on food stamp in 2010. So I'm going to put that down here. That comes from the Census Bureau as well. So homes on food stamps 2010. I'm going to type that number in and you guys follow along. 372,066. So there are just over 372,000 homes on food stamps in North Carolina in 2010, according to the census. What is the percent change then from homes on food stamps in 2010 to homes on food stamps in 2017? Why don't you jump ahead and find out that and put that into column A106, percent change 2010 to 2017, and your answer into B106. And write your formula in B. Okay, I'm going to change that to percent as well. There you go. Did you all get 43? So that could be another sentence that I log. The number of homes receiving food stamps in North Carolina increased 43% from 2010 to 2017. Okay. See, we're picking apart this data. We're logging information in to see, one, if it's a story, and if it is a story, then we have a lot of facts right at our fingertips. Now, I also know that the median household income for the entire U.S., so the average household income in the nation, is $59,000. So we have household income in column H. Let's write an if statement that would populate column I with more than the average household income or less than the average household income, depending on the number in column H. Does that make sense? So insert column in column I and put, why don't we type in more, less than U.S. average income. So it's going to be a long header. So in column I have a header that says more or less than the U.S. average income. And you want to write a if statement that says if it's more or less depending on the value in column H. Okay? You remember how to write an if statement? Okay, there's mine. I haven't hit return yet, so I'm hoping that is correct. But I have if H2 is more than 59,000, right in column I, more than US average. And if it's less than 59,000, right, less than US average. So let's see if that works. Copy it down to check ourselves. Now spot check yourselves. Okay, 61 is more, 49 is less than 59, more, less, and it looks like we have a lot of lesses. You can see just right here, this whole chunk is less than the US average income. And same thing here. Okay, we'll say we wanted to write a quick query, maybe a count if, to count how many of the counties in North Carolina have an average household income that's less than the national average. How would you do that? Well, I'll do it, and if you have to follow along, feel free. Otherwise, knock it out yourself. And I'm trying to count how many are less than the US average. Okay, here's my query, and we'll see if it works. I have equal count if I2 colon I101, so that's my range. And if the text in that column equals less than US average. Now I'm going to count how many times that appears. Let's see if it works. I get 92. I get it in a dollar sign because it's reading column H. I don't want a dollar sign, so I just want a number. And I want to get rid of the zeros. So format number, get rid of the zeros. And you can put that into a sentence as well. So you can have 92 of North Carolina's 100 counties have a median household income below the national average of $59,000, data show. So what was that, 29 minutes or so that we wrote about a dozen queries to clean up, sort, and filter our data. And we came up with maybe a dozen sentences too. In fact, let's check some of those sentences that we wrote out and see what we came up with and where this may lead our reporting. So here's what I have. And of course, in a story, you would never group all these numbers together, but they would certainly help out with your reporting. Let's start from the top. About 42,500 households in Mecklenburg County, or about 11% of the county's homes, receive food stamps according to U.S. Census Bureau data. Homes receiving food stamps in Mecklenburg make up 8% of the state's food stamps recipients. In a dozen North Carolina counties, at least 25% of households are on food stamps, data show. Robeson County leads the list with 30% of homes receiving the subsidy. Overall, more than 530,000 homes, or about 14% of North Carolina homes, are on food stamps, the observer found. The number of homes receiving food stamps in North Carolina increased 43% since 2010. Mecklenburg's median household income is $62,000, data show. 6 counties have a higher average income, including Wake, which has the highest in North Carolina, at $73,600. 92 of North Carolina's 100 counties have a median household income below the national average of $59,000. So that's a lot of good information that we queried from a relatively small spreadsheet. And this could really help our reporting moving forward if it turns out to be a story. Now, where would you guys go next if you had to hammer a story out on this, right? Maybe you talk to people who were on food stamps and are off food stamps, or people who are currently on food stamps, and find out how they get off, if they did, or what put them on food stamps if they're still on. What about talk to North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services? That program, it's a state program that monitors the food stamp subsidy. Or you can talk to Mecklenburg County's Food and Nutrition Services if you're local in Mecklenburg, and find out what specifically is going on in Mecklenburg for the high number of residents on food stamps. Of course, you can talk to a food bank or a food pantry in your town and see if they've seen an increase in visitors. And there's a myriad of places you can go with this data. And it's up-to-date data, excuse me, it's easy to use, and I think it was a real good practice just to sort of get our Excel feet under us before we move on to pivot tables in the next class. Your homework. Using the food stamp data that we've been playing around with, write 2 more formulas to pull information out of the spreadsheet. We've been doing this all class. Add 2 more, unique to you, and then put your findings into sentences that could appear into a story. And the more unique your findings, more interesting, obviously the better. Thanks guys, I hope this was a quick review, and we'll be marching forward with Excel into pivot tables, which are a completely different aspect of Excel, a really powerful tool, and I look forward to teaching it to you. See ya.